Senator Brown will be next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Senator Klobuchar, thank you for ceding your time. I mean, delaying, not ceding, delaying Senator Smith, sorry. And I like looking at Secretary Vilsack because just to his left, I see the new portrait of our chair. So how cool is that? And Secretary Vilsack, thank you for being here many times over the last 15 years or so. Last week, Senators Casey, Fetterman, and I sent a letter to you and Administrator Regan concerning the impacts of the East Palestine train derailment on farmers in the region, not just in that immediate a mile away, but in the region. The 2023 planting season quickly approaches in a climate like Ohio's, and farmers in Columbiana County in Ohio and across the line not far away from the train derailment, Beaver County, Pennsylvania, are frustrated. What they see is a lack of guidance and assistance from their words from USDA. When I was last in East Palestine, I'm going again next, I believe, Tuesday, I heard directly from Ohio farmers seeking assurance that they can safely plant and sell their cattle and their crops. And one woman told me she lives 4 miles away. She raises beef cattle. She has regular customers who are now calling her, that people who buy a side of beef from her, and they're saying, is it safe? And she really doesn't know, and these customers probably will look elsewhere just because of the uncertainty. Those farmers, more than anything, want certainty. Will you commit to working with us to expand testing to include a larger geographic area and include testing for dioxins and other chemicals in milk and beef cattle, understanding that the cost of that will be, should be, and we're not going to allow them off the hook, will be paid by Norfolk Southern?
We'll be happy to do that, Senator. We want to be helpful. I will say that USDA sees its role in this particular circumstance as supporting the farmers, but also supporting EPA in terms of being able to figure out precisely where, how, and what needs to be done to reassure folks that they can continue to farm and continue to market their products.
Thank you, and you've been helpful, and we will continue on that. So much of it's rebuilding trust, not just actually making things safer. Of course, USDA disaster assistance programs are generally ill-equipped to address these environmental disasters that were never really conceived of in places like East Palestine. What type of reforms need to be made to your disaster programs to ensure that all of USDA, including rural development, including the Farm Service Agency, can respond to the next human-made crisis, if you will?
Senator, as smart as the individual and collective members of this committee are, you will never, ever be able to figure out every possible disaster. To be able to fashion a disaster program that fits circumstances all the time, which is why I'm encouraging you to think about flexibility, and also the fact that as disasters strike, they have regional differences as well. The reality is the impact of a particular disaster in one area of the country may be fundamentally different than in another area. So to the extent that you can provide flexibility and allow us to have the capacity to respond to a disaster regardless of its design or cause or structure, that would be helpful.
Well, and I hope we in the new Farm Bill can address this and grant that flexibility, because that's really important.
Just to give you an example, when you established the WHIP program and so forth, nobody anticipated that you'd have a winter storm of the magnitude that we had in the Dakotas, and so we had to kind of look at the language of that and try to figure out, are winter storms included in the language or not? Because we wanted to get help to folks. I mean, so it's just really difficult to be specific as you would like it to be, in order to cover anything and everything that can happen.
Well, and I can guarantee if this body doesn't stand up to the railroad lobby, there will be many more train derailments. Ohio's had 4 in the last 6 months, including a significant one with 200-plus cars after East Palestine. Last question, Secretary Vilsack. The Banking and Housing Committee, which Senator Smith sits on with me, oversees the Rural Housing Service. In our housing hearings, we hear time and again that rural communities, as much as the rest of the country, maybe even more, struggle with a shortage of affordable housing, both to rent and to own, making it hard to attract new businesses or give the next generation of local families a place they can afford. We hear many homeowners just just can't afford the repairs to make old houses safe, older houses. How important is it we take steps to preserve and create affordable housing opportunities in rural communities, and how can the Rural Housing Service help us do that?
Well, I'll just give you one example. You mentioned rental units. We fund multifamily rental apartment complexes. When we provide them subsidies and provide them assistance, we ask them to basically guarantee a certain percentage of their units being subsidized. When they pay off the mortgage, those subsidy units go away, which means the families that have been living in those units, they have no place to go. So you create a voucher program that gives them the ability to move. The problem is the voucher program is funded for roughly 30 projects coming offline, when now, because of the nature of the way things were, we're seeing 70, 80 facilities coming off. So we're basically creating a very significant shortage of rental assistant units in the rural areas. So that's just one example of what we need to do. We need to figure out ways in which we can decouple the notion of the subsidy and the rental assistance and the mortgage so that we have greater capacity to make sure those units stay in existence so that people have a decent place to live at an affordable cost.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Madam Chair, thank you.